Okay, hello and welcome to our today's live panel discussion. Our topic today is, let me just remove the poll, is the connected job site, how IoT alerts are preventing costly setbacks. I'm Iryna Liaschuk. I'm the president in Blynk. I will be moderating our chat today, and I'm joined by two wonderful guests who happen to share the name. I have Matthew Vanture, who is a construction technology expert and IoT enablement expert as well. Matthew currently works at Whiting Turner. For those of you guys who are not in the US or might not know, it's one of the top 5 largest general contractors in the United States. And we also have Matt Ramage, and I'm always tempted to say Ramage. No. Hi, Matt. Thank you for joining. Matt is also a construction technology expert and digital strategy expert. Matt comes from Trimble. He's currently working at Trimble, which is a global leader in advanced positioning and IoT enablement technology, servicing industries like construction, infrastructure, and transportation. Thank you, both of you guys, for joining. Very delighted to have you both. And today we'll be focusing on real-time monitoring with IoT and how we can save costs, how we can prevent delays, avoid risks, and actually spot them before they spiral and prevent very, very costly setbacks for constructions companies. But this is something that's critical, not just for construction. It's really important for any field-based operations. The reality is, for those of you guys who are in this space, out of this space, and I think we have a pretty good mix of folks who are representing construction and technology space. But the reality is the construction teams around the world are under increasing pressure to deliver projects faster, on a smaller budget, and safer. And oftentimes it's the things that you don't really see coming that end up costing you the most. So think about a water leak that happens over the weekend and kind of remains unnoticed for too long, or an unnoticed safety hazard. And so what do companies do to kind of stay ahead of that? This is really where IoT comes in. This is where smart monitoring comes in. So we decided to kind of gather the small group of experts that bring in expertise from both fields, from the tech side and from the field side, and talk about how IoT technologies are implemented today, what's working really well in construction space, what's maybe still a little bit challenging, and what kind of the future holds from the position of the two experts that we brought in today. So with that, I want to encourage you folks to ask questions. You can use the chat and you can use the Q&A. We'll be monitoring throughout the session. Maybe we will be able to reply on the spot, but we will leave some time in the end to go over the questions. Maybe not all of them. We'll cherry pick and leave room for a bit of a Q&A. But we will try to monitor and maybe jump in on some of those during the session. We are aiming for about 30 minutes, so let's dive right in, not waste more time. We have a lot of good questions to cover. All right, so let's start with the big picture. My first question to both of you guys is, where do you think we are with IoT in construction? Do you feel like it's a mature, well adopted technology, or is it still in its infancy, or maybe somewhere in between? And I have a bit of a follow-up to that. What do you think is driving this kind of rise of real-time monitoring that the folks who are kind of close to this space are now starting to experience and observe? Matt, whichever one of you guys, Matt Venture, maybe you want to start.
Yeah, I'll take that one just real quickly. We've been doing this for over 6 years, more organized at least. And honestly, I still feel like we're just scratching the surface. And I do feel that is similar with a lot of my counterparts and contemporaries out there. We've been going through these digital transformations with the iPads, iPhones, just the connected job site in general. But this whole concept of IoT is very much still emerging, still kind of a lot of executives kind of scratching their heads at the space. So great, because there's a lot of opportunity in where we're heading. But just I personally feel like we're still in that infancy of where we're heading. Matt?
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. I think to me, There was a McKinsey study, I think, last year that said that 55% of all large construction firms have deployed IoT devices. But it's very easy to say deployed an IoT device because it can really mean anything from
Yeah.
basic water leak detectors to like time and attendance devices. Could be anything. I think once we start seeing more ready adoption from the mid-market, we'll see more like ubiquitous use of devices throughout construction site. And we're getting there gradually, I think, but especially as we see things like sensor and emitter costs reducing, and also cloud-based platforms that accept multiple devices from different places, because hardest thing with infrastructure is having walled gardens with different platforms that don't accept devices you might already have, things like that. So as we start to deliver like simple use cases and low cost devices, we'll get more adoption across the mid-market. And that's happening right now, in my view.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that one up, because we definitely want to spend time on it. And this is where definitely Blynk jumps in. So we're 100% on board with kind of the need for a unified, like less siloed solution, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. And Matthew, from your perspective, what do you think is driving the rising adoption?
Matt nailed it. Definitely the cost. It's certainly what got me into the space. There's this old adage of what you can't manage, what you can't measure. And so the conversation that was around it from just my peers, the superintendents in the field, the owners complaining to them about different things. I'm like, hey guys, we can monitor that with these simple devices. So the knowledge that these prices are starting to drop is certainly driving a lot of that focus. The cloud compute is driving a lot of that focus, but also this need for the real-time alerts and being able to take some form of action upon that real-time alert, as opposed to just like some sort of data logger that's going to just, oh yeah, something bad happened, here's a report about it. Just really isn't gonna cut it anymore, specifically since we're trying to do so much with so little.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And you kind of made a segue into my next question, as I really want to dive into specifics, right? And Matthew, you are with a general contractor, so you're with field teams all the time. You know their needs really well. You help them enable technologies. What would you say, what kind of issues are the hardest to spot without that real-time monitoring, or at least to spot early enough to take action? And maybe you can give some examples of how using that type of IoT alerts has helped solve or prevent like a major issue or a major, cost center for your company or for any company you're familiar with.
Yeah. I know in the space, for us, what even got us there, which seems kind of bizarre, was actually sound. Being able to let our hospital clients know how we were impacting, and going truly beyond the, construction's loud, we got hammers, right? Like giving them true, real, measurable, this is the decibel impact that we are causing, especially to like a NICU where they have an actual decibel requirement, was really big in being what we call a good neighbor. But more specifically to like my other GCs out there, like we have to manage our trades. And so we had this conditioned spaced issue, which was just a simple temperature and humidity monitoring. But not only being able to track it, but being able to, tell our trade member, like, you need to take this action so that we're not going to have this huge $50,000 loss on our hands because of all this type of millwork that's existing in here. Was really powerful because they were just relying on a data logger. And that can easily be transferred into like these multi-story buildings where you're running water all the way up, and if something goes off on the 8th floor and you don't know about it until Monday morning, I don't want to be in those shoes. Very fun.
Yeah, agreed. Awesome. Thank you for that. And Matt, you coming from more of a technology company, maybe less so on the ground yourself, which use cases would you say you've seen be the ones that have the real impact and like real value from IoT versus some use cases and solutions that maybe they were brought into the market or talked about but were less of a hype? Where does the real value come from, like in specific use cases again?
Yeah, I usually split them into three buckets. Now that I've said three, I hope I remember all three as I talk through this. But for me, risk is the big one that's a motivator. Immediate value, which I'll explain in a second. But with risk, we're looking at the things that may drive down insurance costs, but also you need immediate alerts for things that are very hard to monitor. Like Matthew was just saying on leak detection. These are just so obvious. They're also part of the immediate value camp. They're very hard to monitor. It's things that may go unseen that can cause like large unscheduled delays, which is a huge problem in our industry. I think the average stat is like $1,200 a day on average per GC is the impact of unscheduled delays. Immediate value, though, is where we always saw a lot of traction. And that's where if you have devices or triggers which may give you more abstract ROI, so things relating more to like perceived productivity increases, as opposed to things that you can directly tie ROI to. So this would be things like being able to shut off power in unused areas of the site rather than having all the floodlights on over the weekend because they don't get shut off, but things that I can immediately track value to. And the other big one being where I can be more efficient on existing tasks. So there are things that bleed into the risk side as well, but like time and attendance, these are things that we have to do. But in many states, there are requirements against that time and attendance on, say, local funding and being able to report on the percentage of local workers that are used. These are difficult administrative tasks to manage, and immediately you can achieve success with those things. So there's kind of devices that improve things on site, recognize issues, prevent any kind of loss, risk, delay in schedule, and then devices that immediately improve your productivity by reducing things like administration or any obligations that you have, like local labor laws and or OSHA requirements on if somebody walks on your site and you need to produce in-date training for every worker. These time and attendance tools, things like that, can immediately produce those results. So if they fit in those three camps, I feel like people adopt quickly.
Mm-hmm. Understood. And I'm actually looking through the questions right now, and it seems like Mitchell from, I don't know for which country's from. You guys can also drop in the chat where you're calling in from. It's always fun. We have such a global audience, but Mitchell Keller is asking, I can read it out loud. In talking to mid and small market contractors builders, it sounds like they really need simple examples of how they obtain ROI using new tech. How can contact solution providers improve their communication with end users to better illustrate how they can achieve ROI and how quickly? Can you provide a real world example of how a client achieved ROI on a contact purchase and what the rough timeline was? I think Mitchell's from US. Thank you. I think Matt just touched on some of this, like where this meaningful ROI come from. If you guys can also comment on maybe timelines or, you know, where expand on anything you just shared.
Mitchell, great question. I'm curious if you're sitting on my leadership board because I feel like that's a question I get all the time. But for the particular example I was showcasing was a claim from my said subcontractor that was saying, hey, this stuff got damaged. And it was a $50,000 claim. And we were able to refute the claim saying, no, you were outside of your own tolerances of your own parts and pieces. Now, that's not where we want to get this to. We want to get this to a space where we are proactively collaborating and working alongside of our trade partners. Like that is not the type of solution that I want. I don't think it's a solution that anybody wants. But that exact example of, you know, I basically had the wolf watching the hen house, where I'm saying like, oh yeah, they're monitoring it and they're providing my temp heating and cooling. And it was a problem with the actual piece of equipment. But that was an immediate one. The temperature and humidity ones usually feel like the simplest, but there was another example using carbon monoxide detection. A specific project team needed to accelerate their schedule, which meant they had to use equipment inside, which means carbon monoxide is going to be present. And being able to have that type of detection real time, but also then alerting, right? Like Matt was saying earlier, I'm getting these text messages sent to my superintendents who are in the facility who can immediately take action. I guess I don't have an exact ROI, but like that one would have been, we could actually perform the schedule as we desired.
Yep, very helpful. And Rachel, feel free to follow on with comments or questions. Hopefully that was helpful answer. Thank you guys. And staying on the topic of the field, like we've talked a little bit about the benefits, the examples. There's obviously some pushback as it comes to any new technology, and I'm sure you guys have seen pushback from the field when trying to adopt new stuff. What would you say it's typically tied to? Is this the case? How prevalent it is? And if the field, the projects do push back on the best and brightest technology, what it would be related to? Either of you guys can go, whoever has more experience with this.
That is always one of the biggest challenges, right, Matt? My personal experience is that anything that's too disruptive to the existing way of working is going to be met with high degrees of skepticism and resistance to implementing it, because margins are incredibly tight in construction, and any risk introduced into a project that may affect someone's ability to deliver on time and on budget will receive a great amount of resistance, which means that anything that we bring to the site needs low implementation, low amounts of training, and simple deployment and administration. So I think in the past, we've seen businesses try and deliver solutions that were too far ahead for the market at the time, which required devices on, like, let's say it's devices all around the site on all people, that require recharging and administration of those devices, which puts a big burden on the project without the immediate understanding of how that's benefiting them. And where I've normally seen success is when you're able to set and forget a system, where you come in, you set up the infrastructure needed for the system to work throughout the site, whether that's time and attendance, or it's leak detection, or it's the triggering of lights based on population in a given area. All of these things, if you can set it up in a way that doesn't require on-site administration, with batteries that don't require charging every day, you have much more success. It's low friction when you're bringing it to the project. But I mean, Matt deploys these things all the time on his project, so he'd probably be best to say here.
You nailed
It's simple, right?
Yeah, you nailed it, Matt. Like, conditions of satisfaction is key. Knowing exactly how it's going to, when it hits, how it's going to be executed is everything. Especially back to Mitchell talking about his small market and mid cap guys and gals, like knowing exactly what's going to happen when that sensor arrives, knowing exactly how long those batteries are going to run, exactly what you're going to be monitoring. All of that can be captured very early as to what is the conditions of satisfaction for that project. And if you don't do that, you're going to have a bad time. That's where the field, you can lose them quick. They're very skeptical about this adding value. And as soon as there's kind of a hole or a chink in the armor, they will kind of exploit that, which I think, Iryna, I think might lead you into this whole unified platform kind of concept of, and I'll let you take it back.
Yeah, 100%. You guys let me right to it. Some of the audience, or a lot of the audience here, are familiar with Blynk and kind of what we bring to the table in the IoT space. And most recently now into construction, the two things that we really care about are simplicity and user experience. And what I hear you guys say kind of to me translates into that it has to be simple enough for everyone on the field, whether they're tech savvy, not tech savvy. Just press a couple buttons, it works without no ton of configuration, coding, etc. It just has to be very user friendly. It has to be intuitive, and it has to be simple in terms of not having to open a ton of different UIs. And we talked about that before the session. I personally, we went into construction more kind of deeply, more proactively in 2024 as Blynk as a company, and we've had a chance to speak and work with quite a few general contractors since then. And one theme that comes up over and over again is that there are a lot of siloed solutions. So you can get some really cool solution for water leak monitoring. It does just that. There's a solution for air quality, does just that. There's a badging, there's drones, there's something else, there are safety cameras. And all of a sudden you have 6 or 7 different types of devices and different apps and UIs to go with it. So there's a lot of, it gets overwhelming. So folks can just not keep up with that. So these siloed solutions, these interfaces, and also the data lives in 6 different clouds that are owned by someone else. That's not very helpful. And this is where especially I don't talk to project teams as much, I talk more to the kind of executive folks, but they're all like, give us a unified view, single pane of glass, like where we could see all types of devices. We can, in the behind that, there can be different vendors, but for us, it has to be simple. We should be able to see everything, that's connected in our project and our construction site. And when we started hearing that over and over again, we're like, okay, there's definitely a problem that we can help solve. Being an IoT platform that's kind of Lego-like and very, flexible, you can really integrate different types of sensors, different types of devices. So this is the one that's resonated really, really well with us, which is why we came in with this value prop of being that unified view into all of your connected devices, equipment, people. You can really, whatever you can put sensor on, you can plug into Blynk and see. And then we have flexible enough system to build out workflows that work for the cameras, that works for the badging, that works for the leaks, and that will make sense from kind of user experience perspective. So that's kind of where we come in. And I'd love to hear from you guys. First of all, do you agree with this kind of need and pain of you not having a unified solution readily available? And then if such solution is needed, what does it need to have to be really helpful? Like what would be, to be that IoT platform for construction, that unified view, what does the platform need to have and do from your perspective? Matt, from I was almost said Ramage again.
I told you, I love Ramage as well.
just stick with it after.
Yeah. So Matt and I have an interesting relationship here. Somebody that we would normally sell to Matt and then partner with Matt on these things. So we get kind of both sides of the coin in this conversation. But if I was trying to convince Matt to take on one of these solutions, for me, it very much means that somebody shouldn't be left to their own devices to figure out how to utilize the system. So there's an endless amount of things you could do with devices, and there's an endless amount of configurations and automations that you can run. Understanding what that business's core pain points are and having them kind of pre-configured before it ever hits the site, so leaning back on what we just said, I would say is critical. It's not something that not every business has a department that are experts in this either. So you can partner with Matt, who's very knowledgeable about these things, to make it very relevant for each job. But if you're going to the mid-market, it needs to, out of the box, be configured to work in a way that's delivers kind of immediate value. So the simpler use cases are still not used. I'm a big believer in not delivering too much complexity to a market that's in the early adoption stages. They still need the ready adoption of the simplest pieces, like environmental monitoring, noise, dust, gas, temperature. That helps with compliance. That's a big challenge for people, especially if they're on larger job sites, for any litigation and any conformance to any rules for that area or conditions of winning the job. So setting up those things so that they can succeed immediately will get the buy-in on the job site, and then you work with them to expand and get them more proficient in automation, where multiple sensors could trigger different outcomes. That's my view on it.
Got it. Thank you, Matt. And Matthew, for you, I'll add another one. So what does that unified platform need to be able to do, and what's required of it? And also, should a general contractor try to build one or go out and buy?
I feel targeted. Um, I built one. Don't build one. Definitely don't build one. You're not a data architect. When I was able to see Blynk's architecture, it was just like, yes, this is well thought out. This is on allow for scale, and most importantly, kind of like Matt was just saying, like add as many devices as you're going to need. Because if you just start off with this environmental conditions as we did, and when you want to grow, then you're going to have to go back to your cloud subscription and learn some more. And don't hear me wrong, I loved everything I learned. I would love to talk. Somebody said something about Matter, and I was like, yeah, let's talk about that. But I don't think we have time for it. But buy it, get it out there, get it actionable, get the buy-in, because really this is just the tip of the spear. This is not like the IoT and the job site and the data points you're collecting are just going to start getting you basically to day two, which is where, what the future is going to be. Because by buying it from Blynk, you are having the unified, you're having the single pane. Matt mentioned he sells me stuff. I buy a lot of his stuff and I have tons of apps and I got to figure out which app I'm supposed to use. Blynk allows you to also bring stuff to them. Like Iryna was saying about cameras. We've talked about cameras a lot. They're a partner who can bring that in to their platforms by having that unified, which allows you to kind of look further and be a little bit more strategic and talk with guys like Matt and say like, well, how could we do X, Y, and Z and really begin to grow and blossom your core business.
Yep. Thank you. Well said. Lots of praise there. I appreciate that. From our side, I would just add, if that's not your core, and for most construction companies and like companies that are building buildings, it is not the core expertise, and they don't have the team of Google type X engineers sitting trying to build something. So it's hard. If you don't have to, don't do it. Come talk to us. We'll try to help. I think Matthew learned it the hard way. So
hard way.
Definitely experiences, it's valuable there. Thank you guys for sharing that. And on Matter and Thread at the end, if we do have a minute, if you have stuff to say there, I think our team has replied, but I'd love to hear your perspective as well. I have a final question, and then we will close out with maybe a couple more questions if we have more, but this one really makes me excited. How do you see the connected job site of, say, 2030? What's happening there? Or what are kind of the most interesting and valuable emerging trends and technologies that you're watching that you think really are here to stay or to evolve and are gonna really be bringing value to construction 5 years from now?
Well, I teetered on it a little bit, so I'll speak up to the computer vision, or at least cameras. And cameras and computer vision, AI is obviously exciting, but that AI is more about standard data collection anyways. You need to have good, clean data in order to participate really in any of that from a meaningful perspective for your own company. And so, by starting with this IoT business, you really are putting yourself on that trajectory. But in the computer vision space, it's, having the ability to know even more about what's happening on your job from a visual perspective, allowing a computer to also run some analysis and then have that alert teams, just having more eyes help us with avoiding any type of safety concerns or any, risk possibilities. And I really, I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping that's the year of, in 2 years from now, we're going to have that kind of thing. So I hope I'm not aggressive enough on what we could do.
Got it. What about you, Matt?
I have a similar view for sure. And I actually think the use of cameras as a primary sensor that allows you to achieve a lot of different results is where I've kind of hoped the industry would go for a while. There's some challenges with having cameras on site. Lots of challenges, not just from deployment of the hardware, but just on what you can actually capture and process. But so to me, I think that the big advances in AI are going to help us a lot. So autonomous and connected machinery, I do think that we can self-coordinate machinery by shared data on site. So all of this information we're getting, the mapping of sites, camera data to be able to show us what changes in those sites, gives us enough information to be able to guide machinery and people, the most opportune routes that people can take, that kind of thing. I do think is like we're almost there. But then things like AI copilots, which accompany you in all of your tasks. So being able to generate your reporting, flag deviations, make recommendations on the fly decisions based on all of the information that's being pumped in from devices. Like there's everything from weather to like sensors within materials, and how is that going to impact my day, and how can I proactively avoid unscheduled delays? I still think that preventing unscheduled delays is where the focus is going to be. And that is all about consuming huge amounts of information that you're reading on the site and producing very rapid recommendations. And only an AI linked to all of the data. The more data we can get, like Matt was saying earlier, the more data we can get from the site, the more readily something like an AI could produce recommendations for us, which allows humans to do their jobs better, make decisions quicker, like react quickly. And I think that that's very important, and that's where I hope we'll be in the next 5 years.
Hope so as well. That sounds like a great connected job site of 2030. I do have a couple more questions. I know we're out over time, so people will probably be dropping off a little bit, but I see a question that got quite a few likes, so I want to voice it. What are major security blockers you face during deployment of connected IoT devices into large-scale organization? And this is coming from Switzerland. I maybe direct this to Matt. Ramage, you guys are, deployed across the world. Anything you want to share on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine Matt lives this daily as well on data security and how information is processed. And really, the different sensors produce different data. Like I was mentioning about cameras, like how that information is held and stored, especially in Europe or Canada or California, that has real or very, very strenuous requirements on the legal teams and the business itself. So, it's making sure that the system can match the security requirements of a given region, that it's flexible enough on things like data storage, that data sovereignty is respected if it's a global platform. Things, if you're in Switzerland, there's data sovereignty laws that need to be upheld as well. So it's making sure this is another reason to kind of buy than build, where it becomes the absolute mainstay of the business, like I guess Blynk in this example. That's a core focus where you have to satisfy those to be able to deliver for your customers in a given region. That is hard to scale and change if you're doing it yourself as well. So as we expand, or if any business is set to expand, you want to be with a partner that can expand with you. And that kind of minefield of security requirements is
Have
hard
someone else worry about that. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And one more question from guys. Thank you for that, Matt. Getting the buy-in probably the most difficult to achieve in larger scale org, as there are many more stakeholders to involve. Any experience, or maybe I would translate that into any advice, because or Matt, how do you guys get to your executives to kind of give you green light to go ahead with these new technologies?
I use a lot of fear. To be holistically blunt there for you guys, since we're short on time. Construction managers, superintendents love to believe that they have a good handle on what's happening on their job site, and to paint a picture or tell a story where they don't, or didn't, or couldn't have, because it's an impossible odorless gas like carbon monoxide. Really helps with buy-in, specifically if you're a company that says you believe in the safety of every employee coming on your job site and making sure that they can go home safely at the end of the day. That one does gain a lot. But also I'll kind of piggyback just real quick on the security piece. If you're a large scale, you probably do already have some sort of organizations and processes in place. And whether it be one of those, one of those could lead the other into saying we need to have better processes in place that allow us to answer these kinds of questions more pointedly. It was another kind of big piece of helping to deploy those things. And then the last one, honestly, is if you can figure out a way to make money on it, that works out very well here in the United States, specifically with a lot of folks on my team.
Couldn't agree more. We are unfortunately out of time. I would love to keep going. I think we'll need to follow up. I see more questions. Folks who did not have a chance to get your questions answered or have more questions as a follow-up, shoot us a note. We have contact sales forums. We have other ways to get in touch with us, but we'd love to hear from you all. I wanted to share a big thank you to both of our Matthews today for sharing your time, your expertise, and kind of being blunt and specific in your knowledge. A lot of the times there's a lot of, high level talk, but it's always very beneficial to hear kind of what's really happened to someone and how they've solved it, et cetera. And of course, next time, if there is more interest, we'll do longer sessions. We'll go more in depth. This is our first one on construction. So any feedback is welcome. And, there's a lot of feedback. We'll do more. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. I know we have some folks who are ending the day, starting the day. So great to see you all and looking forward to the next chat.